Ethical Fading, A Moral Dilemma, Margaret Terrell, Philip Jones, Malik Noon, and Nicholas Punty. Anna Terrebels first described ethical fading in 2004 as the process by which moral colors of an ethical decision fade into bleaching hues that are void of moral implications. Ethical fading is a large problem because it is often seen that ethics training is ineffective because of the way ethical fading comes about, and it is based on the art of self deception, which leads to us seeing ethical decisions as non-ethical decisions. How it first starts is language emphasis. We disguise stories we tell ourselves about our unethical actions. They're often an edited version of the real story, devoid of all ethical implications. We turn what may be unacceptable into societally acceptable, approved behaviors. Um, Language emphasis often, as the example up in the top right, my goldfish passed away. It died. There's things that we tell us, but we change the language of so it doesn't seem as bad. Examples: engaged in aggressive accounting practices, not illegal ones. Collateral damage in military campaigns, not civilian deaths. Language emphasis allow us to white lie to ourselves. They allow us to de-emphasize the truth, or not de-emphasize it, but lessen it. They lessen the consequences and they lessen the actions that we are taking or our organization is taking. The second part of what leads to ethical fading is the slippery slope of decision making. It's comprised of two components: a repeated exposure to ethical dilemmas that may produce ethical numbing, where because we are introduced to so many of these situations, we eventually become numb to the actual ethical implications of it. And then the second part is, after this ethical numbing happened, it's less likely that we see an ethical part of the dilemma, and hence we engage more in an unreflective and potentially unethical behavior. Say that where I normally would see the efficacy of a situation, instead I no longer look for it. I no longer care if it's ethical because I no longer really look for what is the ethical behavior. If what to continue that point, if what we were doing in the past is okay and our current practice is almost identical, then it too must be okay. So because of us doing these continual ethical dilemmas that come from that form this ethical numbing, it makes it seem that because we've done it in the past, it's okay to do it now. And then there's the errors in perceptual causation. We erroneously think that we cannot fix the problem because it is a people and not a system issue. It's a people issue that the machine broke down, and it isn't because the machine itself is faulty. It's someone misused it. Someone didn't oil it properly. We also falsely believe that it's someone else's problem either because they are to blame or because the responsibility is someone else's, not ours. So in this, we shift the blame from us. We don't believe it's the problem. These unethical things are happening. This could be because we are mid-level management, or we could blame it on our shareholders, even if we are the CEO, because they want more money. And therefore, we have to give it to them. Or say I'm a shareholder and I believe that, the CEO is doing best, even if it looks unethical, it isn't really my problem. I have no liability for it. While different from hiding ethical implications of our own action, this form of self-deception removes the ethical decisions from our backyard and moves it away from us when it really should be something we focus on.
All right, and moving on to the constrained representation of ourself. So it's kind of like we're experiencing the world through our own sensory organs, not those of others. So we're really not taking into account, from other people's perspective on the the matter. And the best we can do is to try to imagine what the other would experience from our own perspective. So we're kind of lying to ourselves that we're putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, even though you're still looking at it from your own kind of self-interested perspective on the matter. So then moving on to the next slide, and then how these issues could lead to ethical fading. So that self-deception that we were just talking about, that can help disguise violations of our own ethical principles, because we're kind of like Philip was talking about, we're removing ethics from the subject. So we're basically taking that out of account. We're almost creating or developing hypocrisy in our own mind and just accepting it. So with that ethical fading, we're almost temporarily suspending any notion of like right or wrong, because we're justifying it with our own self-interest. And in that, if we don't see that our actions are unethical, then we can behave in a self-interested way that ultimately does lead to unethical behavior. Yeah.
Okay, so some real world examples would be, as of lately, pharmaceutical companies have been increasing drug prices of 245 drugs, which 75% of them are impacted directly by COVID-19. So companies are still trying to provide great service to the American people, but at the end of the day, they want to try and meet their bottom line. So they're running to some ethical issues. And another article said that Nestle, Cargill, Barry Callebaut, companies like that are filing lawsuits with the human rights firm. And this pertains to the child labor in their factories that in the West African countries. Oh, next. And as ethics begin to fade in different interactions, different relationships are going to be built, and different codes are going to be broken, and more different codes are going to be put in state. Ethics will change as the society changes, and people's behaviors will start to change as well to match the environment that they're put around. So the principles, the morality, responsibilities, trust, and all the choices will basically be put on the environment that they are surrounded, and it can cause good and harm the company in both ways.